Wolfman's got nards. Welcome to the Hey You Guys podcast. We are your hosts, Liam and Rob, and I'm going to start off at the bat. This film is so odd, but I honestly still love it. I think I had such a great time watching this film again.
I mean, I had a good time. I mean, I'm not sure if I had a great time. It's a weird film going back to. I mean, we've had like two absolute stone cold classics first, like Goonies and Predator. I would say are objectively good movies. Going back and watching this, I don't think this is an objectively good movie at all. It's an enjoyable film for sure, but whether it's a good film is a completely different question. But I agree with you. Like, I enjoyed watching it. But at the same time, I was fully aware the whole time. I was like, is this actually any good? I was like, I don't think it is.
I love it for nostalgia. I absolutely love this film. And it is definitely linked to the nostalgia. But
100%. Like we always say, like with this podcast, one of the things is like, yeah, you know, do we still enjoy it? And the answer to that question, obviously for Rob, is yes, me to a certain extent. But the other question is, would we encourage other people to watch it? Like if somebody had no nostalgia attached to this film, would you go and tell them to watch Monster Squad? I don't think I would.
After I've picked this film apart with my notes, they've extended quite a bit. I don't know. I guess we'll wait until the end whether I've decided I want other people to watch it. But
sorry, we usually do at the end. I've totally jumped the gun, but I think it's going to be pretty clear for myself that and the thing is, I did watch it with my wife. She'd never seen it before.
My wife
and she wasn't the biggest fan of it, to be honest. And funny enough, since I've mentioned this, a bunch of my friends have all gone out and rewatched Monster Squad. I'd like to think, you know, because they want to listen to the podcast, but part of it is just because this film wasn't available over here for years, and suddenly it's appeared on Amazon Prime. I didn't even know about it until you mentioned it. And they've had mixed reviews. The people with the nostalgia have enjoyed it, usually with an asterisk, like caveat next to it. But when they've asked their other halves to watch it, it's not gone down well at all, man. But like you said, it's because it's a weird fucking film. It's a weird film.
I've had the same. I've had a lot of people just come to me and say, like, Monster Squad, I loved that film when I was a kid, or I can't believe that you've chosen Monster Squad as your third film, because it's out there, let's be fair.
Oh, it's mental. And I mean, I think I was moaning on the first podcast we did, which was the Goonies, that some people had the audacity to refer to that as a cult movie, which it fucking isn't. It just isn't. It made too much money. It's far too popular. This is the dictionary definition of a cult movie. If you look at cult movie in the dictionary, it should have a picture of this movie next to it, because it totally bombed. It wasn't even a massive, I think it was like a $12 million budget. It did $4 million. But for someone really, like, the legacy of this film has totally lived on, to the point where, you know, I'm sure you're going to bring it up, the fact that, you know, there's a documentary came out just a couple of years ago, one of those like kind of fan-created one, Wolfman's got nards, the famous quote from the film. And there is a reason, like, while I wouldn't say, again, it's objectively good, there's something about this film. There's a reason that it's lived on, that people still talk about it today, and that people still, who watched it back in the 80s and early 90s, still love it now. And it does have a weird charm, but one of the reasons, I think, is because if you were watching this when you were a kid, it's so tonally inconsistent. It's like, what do you think? Do you think this is a kid's film, or do you think it's a horror film? I would say it's a bit of both. Yeah,
it is. It's definitely a bit of both. I mean, I think that the actors were all acting in different films. Like, the kids are definitely acting in an adventure film. The father is acting in some sort of serial killer, got to catch the serial killer cop film. Obviously,
that whole thing with him as partner is pretty strange.
Dracula is like, I'm in a monster movie. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
He is in a Bela Lugosi classic kind of.
Thing
he's good, but I don't know. I mean, I watching this through an adult's eyes. Like, you see a lot more than what I saw. Like I said, I think the last time I saw this was probably about 25 years ago.
Same here.
Yeah, and like, I've seen it multiple times before that, but that was the last time I watched it. And I absolutely loved it. From everything, the way the monsters look, I still think the monsters look great today. Stan Winston did a great job. I think the
monsters do look, despite the fact that they're all, and we'll probably cover this in greater detail in a bit, despite the fact that they're all actually quite useless, they look amazing. Like, they totally capture that, like, 50s, traditional, like, when you think of the Universal monsters, despite there being obvious licensing issues with the names, they look more like the Universal Monsters than maybe the Universal Monsters do. Like they are quintessential 50s, and they totally nailed that.
Oh, absolutely. And and like you said, it is just a like, it feels like different movies just in one. And in regards to not just the tone, the pacing of this film as well. My God, the pacing goes.
Oh yeah, it flies by, this film. I mean, how long is it? It's not that long either.
It's 90 minutes.
Just kind of clips on.
It's 90 minutes long, but or like 87 minutes, something like that. But the fact that they introduced a new guy to their squad, and we'll get to all that later. They start it. All of a sudden, like, Dracula's in their backyard. Has he been there all along? Has he just arrived? Like, and then all of a sudden, this right, we got to stop him. Oh, we got 20 minutes till midnight, which 20 minutes till midnight lasted a long time, by the way.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, you're talking about pacing, but I'm not sure if it's a good or a bad thing. A lot of the things you're talking about is poor script writing or terrible editing, because things just fucking happen in this film. Yeah. People just jump around. Dracula suddenly has a car. We don't know why. I'm not quite sure what that house is in the middle of the fucking swamp, like next to the city. The whole, like, very little of that's explained in any great detail. I'm still not quite sure why they're there in America. Maybe it is explained.
Well, no, it's not. And she got, like, Van Helsing's book from that house in Shadowbrook Road, Shadowbrook Lane. Mm-hmm. But it looks like Dracula's been holed up there for a while.
Yeah, the timelines are all weird as shit. How does Dracula get onto that plane? I know he's a bat, but he just kind of appears on that plane at the start. The whole scene on the plane, again, you talk about those tonal inconsistencies. Like, there's weird stuff about people's jobs. Like, the guy flying the plane, like, it's like a little sketch at the start where they're just like, oh man, I hate this job. And he's like,
I'm so depressed.
Cool. Yeah. And he's like, oh yeah, you're right, this job is kind of cool. And they do the same kind of thing, but in a more serious way at the police station. There's just these little bits of other films bolted on to this strange family movie, horror movie hybrid.
If I've ever seen a film that makes you like that you know is definitely a set, it's this film.
Yeah.
The police station,
real clangers. Yeah,
you know they're on a set. When they go to the town square, it looks like they're in the model village from Beetlejuice.
I said the exact same. The exact same thing to my wife. I was like, dude, this looks. Occasionally, I call my wife dude for some odd reason, but I was like, this looks like the model village from Beetlejuice with them just walking around it. But I tell you what, that was one of my favorite things about it. They were my favorite bits of the film. Was when it felt really 80s, really Amblin, really staged. Like the end of the film in particular, when I think it actually goes much more horror in the last quarter. It feels more like the film it reminded me of most towards the end was Poltergeist. In terms of a film which I think nailed that balance between being a family film and a horror film. Whereas this film, it gets it at certain points, but then in other parts, it was like, we don't know if we're not sure if we want to be the Goonies or we want to be Poltergeist. That felt to me like the two kind of opposing sides of this film, and they kind of mixed in all together. And as I said, you even get it with the characters. Like one of the most interesting characters in the film for me is actually is Dracula. And I know... what's his name? Duncan Roger, the actor, I think it was. And bizarrely, I was like, I saw this magazine, it was Wizard magazine, which had like the most famous movie characters, and they had Dracula down as number 30. But unbelievably, they had his interpretation in Monster Squad as the greatest ever Dracula on screen. And I was like they still I'm not sure about that, man.
Like, actually, he is classed as one of the greatest Draculas on screen. Like,
the thing is, one minute, I remember I was watching it at the start, and I was like, dude, this is like the worst Dracula since fucking Van Helsing. I was like, he's so camp, he doesn't do anything, it's stupid. But then all of a sudden, something changes, and he gets more threatening, and I'm like, this is like, he's awesome all of a sudden. Yeah. It's like all the way through the film, it's kind of, like I said, he's got this magic car which shows up. He's got jump leads on his cane, which for some odd reason...
Like, I mean, if you ever needed jumper cables, just... They're in your walking
Dracula. Yeah, you're walking. I'm not sure. Are those for his car or are they for Frankenstein? I'm not sure. But then all of a sudden at the end of the film, he just starts snapping necks. And it's not just him. It all starts with the bit where Wolfman gets blown up, yeah?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden his body parts kind of start re-emerging. And suddenly I'm like, this feels like something out of like an American Werewolf in London. Like, it's pretty gross. Yeah. I'm like, this is supposed to be a kid's film. And then 2 minutes later, you've got Dracula walking down the street, grabbing cops and audibly breaking their necks.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, this is not the same fucking campy Dracula from the start of the film. It's absolutely insane.
So if we jump back to the start,
Yeah, so I've just, as always, I always start at the beginning, jump right to the end, and then sneak back to the beginning. That's very much my style when it comes to this podcast.
So if we, because they're trying to set up the whole thing at the start with the amulet and stuff, and it just feels out of place, like the beginning. But
I love the beginning, though. I do love it, I gotta be honest.
What got me is they would go into Castle Grayskull.
Yeah.
Like, it's just on the end of it, like at the top of a cliff, and they're just traveling. Like, it felt like Castle Grayskull to me.
Yeah. I thought it looked cool, though. And again, I thought the start looked like a proper horror film. I love, and it's one of the things I love about the film is actually the score, which I think totally sells it as a kind of fantasy horror film. But again, all of a sudden then it goes back to late 80s high school hijinks, and it's strange. It's strange. That whole bit with Van Helsing is pretty mental.
I had a couple of notes from that bit, like the screaming at the girl's definitely going to make it go faster, isn't it?
That was...
He's just literally screaming at her while she's trying to read this translation. And even if she's like German, she's fluent German, if you're screaming at somebody, I don't think they're going to be able to read it properly anyway.
No, I don't think that helps. If someone's like, listen, you've got to read this in the next 20 seconds. Yeah, I take it on my own shoulders. We probably should have got here earlier. I don't know why we've left so late. But for you to do it in the next, 3 minutes, the only way I can foresee this happening is if I scream relentlessly in your face to go faster and clearer. I think that should probably do the job.
I love it when they lit the bundle of TNT with that torch. Did you notice that?
What's that?
As they're trying to, at the beginning of the film, they're trying to blow up the gate to get into, I guess, Dracula's house.
Yeah.
And they lit the TNT, the dynamite. And he literally had the world's biggest flame, and he stuck what looked like the whole dynamite in the flame.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry. I know exactly what you mean. I'm like, dude, how did you not blow yourself up?
How are you going to lose your life?
And they did actually look, because I assumed it was a stunt, but even after that, it looked like the explosion was pretty close to him. I'm like, dude, like the wick's too short, the flame's too big. I was like, do you all want to die? Like, how incompetent are you? And again, it speaks to Van Helsing's poor planning. Like, they've got there too late. He's got these idiots lighting dynamites with fucking giant torches. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it speaks to an ill-advised plan, poorly executed. He's got away with it. He's fucking got away with it, Van Helsing, the jammy bastard.
His crossbow as well, with the biggest wooden stake in the world in it, and the vampire, I think it was the bride, one of the brides,
Dracula's brides,
he could have she was so close, he could have threw it at her.
Well, that's one of my issues with it, right? I think all the monsters, I think, look great. Just to be clear, they look, and it's one of the reasons this movie holds up is because it's so charming. I love that 50s aesthetic, and it's not just the four core monsters, as it were. I think Dracula's brides look amazing as well. But Dracula's brides are shit. Like in the 80s timeline and back in Dracula's castle, all they do is they look cool. They kind of do that weird hissing thing, and then they just stand there and wait to get shot in the face or in the heart, whatever, But I'm like, they are so rubbish. They don't do anything. They just get killed. But then you could say the same for Gilman, if that's what we're going to call him. I mean, that's what they call him in the film. And the Mummy. I mean, I got to be honest. I love the fact that this lineup of monsters is essentially the Pro Evo of Universal Monsters. Like, it's almost the Universal Monsters, but because of licensing issues, I can't remember the company who made it.
It's just one step behind,
Yeah, and they're so close. The only one which really stands out is the fact that the creature from the Blue Lagoon is called Gilman, which is like the worst. It's like the Roberto Larcos of movie monsters. It's just terrible. But the other ones, like Dracula, I assume, it's a name in the public domain, so they could take it.
Yeah.
And supposedly they've made changes so that Universal can sue them, but I don't know what the fuck are the changes with Dracula, because it looks exactly the same. I mean, I know with Frankenstein's monster, all they did was move his bolts from his neck to his forehead. That's it.
And they didn't really. Well, no, they called him Frank, didn't they? A lot, like Frankie and stuff.
Yeah, well, no, dude. When he's on the fucking plane in the box, it literally says Frankenstein on the box.
Yeah,
which is like, dude, who the fuck wrote Frankenstein on the box? It's ridiculous.
They when he turned into the bat on the plane as well, and when you had the bats in the in Van Helsing's time, it looks like they borrowed the bats from the Goonies again.
It does, but again, and this is something I'm going to keep bringing up: this weird inconsistency with tone. The bats look really dopey and lame, But at the very start of the film, when you see the bat transform into Dracula, it's fucking gross.
Yeah.
Like, it's up there with, it reminded me of American Werewolf in London, the transformation scene. With,
in the alleyway, that's, yeah.
The one in his house when he transforms for the first time.
Oh, okay.
And, the famous transformation scene from American Werewolf in London, when he's in his living room, he transforms and you see it all physically and they use physical effects and it's amazing. And it reminded me, it's not as elaborate at the start, but there's a scene and you have a close-up of obviously an animatronic bat and it looks gross. And then like the wings come out and the hands turn into like human hands and it's like super gross and really detailed. I'm like, this looks amazing. And then suddenly Dracula drops down. He looks like quintessential Dracula. Like, that is fucking awesome. And then all of a sudden, he's got these lame-ass Goonie bats just kind of flying around him. I'm just like, what the hell just happened? Did you use all the budget for that scene in the one bit? It's really odd. Really odd.
That's a testament to Stan Winston, though. Like, again, the creature effects. Like, so you got Stan Winston doing these great creature effects, and you probably got some like second unit director or something just gluing some wings to a toilet roll holder.
It's like you say, like it's just 1 minute it looks amazing, the next minute it looks a bit budget, and it runs all the way through the film. But like I said, I actually think it looks better as it goes on because I know it looks like a set, and some of it looks terrible. Like there's one matte painting, when he's sitting on the roof with his dad watching the movie, and you see the city and the screen. Like it's the most blatant matte painting I've ever seen in my life. But I do like the fact that it reminds me of like Back to the Future. And, like they can control all those physical effects, like the wind and everything. It all feels very tangible. And again, at that point, everything feels a little bit more scary, like there's more of a risk to it. But one thing I'll say all the way through the film is like, do the quote unquote monster squad actually do all that much other than make super awesome calling cards? Like that's one of the things they do.
Well, yeah, because obviously then you get the introduction of them. And the one thing I wanted to point out when you've got the introduction of Shane Black really seems to jump into his own as the writer on this, because the two best friends who I found out were actually best friends in real life, and the guy that played Sean, Andre Gower, he actually he fought for the guy to be his best friend Patrick, and you could
what's his name? Bobby Kiger. Right, sorry, Robbie Kiger, who played Patrick. Yeah.
And you could feel the banter between them, like when they're talking to the principal about Mrs. Meow Mix or anything.
It's all very
and
Shane Black for sure.
Yeah. So you can understand
and Wolfman's door. Just to be clear, can I ask one quick question? Because this is all under the whole banter thing that they have. Yeah. They refer to Wolfman's dork because it's like, what you call Wolfman's penis. And again, it feels like a throwback to kind of Stand By Me, as in, the whole goofy wearing pants and is he a dog and stuff. I've never heard of anyone's penis, Wolfman or otherwise, referred to as a dork.
No.
Have you?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to check that out because when I was like, a dork, I was like, I've never fucking heard
But
that
they use
before.
that again, didn't they, when they ask if his sister's been
dorked.
His sister's a virgin. He goes, have you ever been dorked? Like
I've got some notes on his sister as well.
So you got the introduction of these two, and they feel like friends. They've been a while, and they've got the third kid, which for some reason, why he hangs around with them, I don't know. If they give him the nickname Fat Kid.
Well, everyone seems to call him Fat Kid.
I know.
It's quite,
they're meant to be your best friends.
Yeah, but kids are mean, and this is the 80s. It's like, it's straight away those two kind of bully kids, and I think it's one of those bullies from the Wonder Years.
Yeah, the brother from the Wonder Years. He's
I thought it was
also in Tremors.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. I thought it was him. And he comes up and he calls him Fat Kid, and as is so often the case in these 80s movies, just liberally and casually throws in the term faggot, because that was used in, like going back and watching a lot of these films, man, faggot is absolutely carpet bombed through all of these films. It's unbelievable. And so everyone's calling him Fat Kid, but it's kind of like the whole chunk thing again. Yeah, it's a bit more on the nose, but it's like your friends making you like wiggle your fat belly in front of your friend. It's just like, this was, and again, we mentioned before, same with Stand By Me, everyone gives him a hard time. It's, sure, a bit on the nose, given, that he's just called Fat Kid, but it just seemed to be one of those things. In the 80s, it was still totally acceptable to call people out for their weight. It's bizarre watching it now, but it is just one of those things.
So these kids are, I think, about to be 12 or 13 in this, and then Rudy is, I think he's 16.
47.
Yeah, I had that written down. Why is this motherfucker, this 45-year-old man?
Yeah. With these I don't get it. Like, he shows up and he stops the other kids from bullying fat kids. Fair enough. But then he, like, Horace is his real name is, comes over to the other guys and he's like, oh, can he hang around with us? Like, it's their choice. Like, Rudy's said to him, it's like, oh, you know, by the way, could I hang around with you and your 13-year-old friends and join your fucking monster club? Like, why? Again, there's no explanation. Like, they're kind of selling him as being this, like, super cool kid. Like, you see the way the other kids react to him. They're like, oh, don't fuck with Rudy. Yeah. Rudy's the shit. Why the fuck does he want to hang around with kids 2-3 years younger than him? It's like the Goonies again. It's weird as hell. And
that motherfucker is a pervert. I mean, the only reason he actually wanted to join it is because he wanted to set the camera up.
Oh, yeah, I suppose. So Patrick's sister.
Yeah.
There's a few weird things with that. One, it kind of leads into this whole revenge porn plot where he kind of basically says to it, like, you've got to do this or otherwise I'm selling the pictures of you topless, to everyone in the school, which is pretty fucked up, obviously. Yeah. Hashtag me too. The other thing is, what's her name? Is it Lisa, the sister? I think it's Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa.
Let's go with Lisa. Is she always just getting? Is she like in a perpetual sense of like just always getting undressed at the window? Is that all she does? Because Frankie catches her later. It's like, dude, like I think she wants to get caught. I don't want to. I'm not on about victim shaming here, but at some point you've got to be like, look, you must realize you're taking off your clothes at the front window all the fucking time. It's a bit suspect.
My wife said the same. Like she said when we were watching it, she said, "Is that all she does? Is just get undressed at the window?"
And she does that, and then she pretends that she's not a. And let's be honest, she plays the "I'm not a virgin" card far too long. Like as soon as she buys into the idea that there are monsters and the only way to stop them is a virgin reading this text in German, she should kind of fess up at that point and go, listen, guys, I did have sex. I did have, I'm not a virgin. This isn't going to work. She leaves it until what? Like, she doesn't even admit to it. Eventually she has to because it doesn't work. And well, it's not working. She's like, oh yeah, I did take a dick. Sorry. I probably should have mentioned that. And then of course, all the way in the build-up, all the way through this, because it's clear she's obviously not going to be a virgin. But my wife just keeps saying, why don't they ask the little girl? She's clearly going to be a virgin. I know she won't know German, although she does pretty well with the German in the film.
Yeah, phonetically, she sounds spot
pretty
on.
Convincing. Yeah. Pretty convincing. But yeah, the whole Rudy thing is pretty odd. The look, like that whole 50s vibe, it kind of leans into the whole monsters thing. Like he's definitely got the rebel without a cause look.
But I love it how he couldn't show up on a motorbike because obviously he's meant to be playing a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
So, he rocks up on a classic chopper,
BMX or chopper, whatever it is. Yeah. I mean, he's got the thing is, like, it's not just the monsters. Like, obviously, it's set in the 80s, the late 80s. Because of the fashion, it bizarrely looks like an early 90s film quite often. In the same way that, like, Do the Right Thing is like an 80s film, but looks totally like a 90s film. Yeah. It has that same vibe, but the way they're dressed, the skateboards, all of it to me screams early 90s rather than late 80s.
I wrote it down, right? I actually like fat kids' fashion sense. I
totally do.
And his two-tone shorts as well. Like, just
it's dope.
Oh, mate.
The fashion has totally come back around on them. Totally has. And I mean, I'm going to buy the t-shirt, Stephen King Rules. I fucking love that t-shirt. Like even the 50s, as again, to come back to the whole 50s vibe, it's kind of strange because obviously you've got the 50s style monsters. Then you've got this Rudy kid who's like a 50s style movie star. And then they even end up spending time in what is clearly a 50s style diner. Yeah. Again, when is this supposed to fucking be? It's in kind of pretend land again, isn't it? It's a strange strange piece for sure.
Were drive-in movies big in the 80s and stuff? I'm not too sure when the drive-in.
Again, that's a quintessentially 50s thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So again, it's just, it doesn't seem to decide when it's set, where it's set. I don't know. The whole thing is, I'm not sure if it's one of those things where it's just been poorly thought out, poorly edited or something. Again, you feel like maybe there's like a 2-hour cut of this film, which makes a little bit more sense. Because like I said, my biggest issue remains, like, I never really got an idea for where Dracula was.
No.
Or how he got there.
Yeah.
he's just in this house where the amulet is. I'm not sure why it's in America. Maybe it's explained and I've just missed it amongst the fucking madness.
They cut like 13 minutes of the film because the producers wanted it under 90 minutes. So, I mean, maybe they were 13 minutes of actual story. We're not too sure.
There might have been.
But there might have been. The last, obviously not mentioning Phoebe at the moment because she has a big part when it comes to Frankenstein. But the last member of the Monster Squad then is this random 6-year-old Eugene.
What the fuck's he doing in it?
Like, where did he come from? Who is he related to? Like,
I don't know.
He just obviously he's not related to him because his dad is different. But like, yeah, all of a sudden you just got this kid. You don't even know if he's their neighbor or anything. This random kid with his dog just appears out of nowhere, and it's like, oh yeah, we'll take him on. Happy days. We'll.
I don't understand it. He's just there. He has a dog with him for comedy relief.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, when he's there and they're in the treehouse, which is, don't get me wrong, is a fucking super dope treehouse, just to be clear.
Oh, yeah.
But again, it briefly turns into an episode of The Little Rascals. Like, you know, where they all put their hands on each other. And then I was like, as I'm watching, I'm like, I couldn't remember it, but I'm like, 100% that dog's going to put his paw on the fucking kid's hands. Because that's exactly what happened in The Little Rascals. And again, it was like, was it just so he could hang around with the dog? Because at some point, I was like, wait a minute, what's Eugene doing? Because just to be clear, Patrick, even though he has all that kind of banter with at the start of the film, with, what's his name? What's his friend? Sean, thank you. Yeah. Patrick kind of just disappears and doesn't do much for the rest of the film. No. And Eugene literally does nothing other than write a fucking letter to the army, which I'm sure I wrote it down.
I wrote it down.
Fucking quotes. Oh, well, you can deal with it then.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's Dear Army, please come quick, Eugene.
Yeah. That is literally. Oh, Dear Army guys. That's
Dear
it.
Army guys. Yeah. I think the only reason they had Eugene in there was so he could do "Is she a virgin?" joke, because it wouldn't sound right coming from a 12-year-old, but another 6-year-old calling it a virgin, or
it's a long stretch just to put this kid in. Sorry, I do have to go. Dear Army guys, come quick. There are monsters, Eugene. So, all right, he's written that on a piece of paper as part of the fantastic montage we'll get to in a moment. But it's like, who has he sent this to? Like, is he just put it in the post to the fucking army? And the most bizarre thing is, like, when the film is ostensibly finished, like, Dracula's being sent through the portal, Van Helsing shows up and gives a thumbs up, which I'm not sure how I feel about at all. And then, just as you think everything's done, the fucking army roll into town, which couldn't have been cheap because they, there's quite a few vehicles in that scene. I'm like, how much do they spend on this weird lame-ass joke where the armies show up and they're like, who's running this operation? Is it just so they can say we're the Monster Squad and justify having those cards fucking made out at the start? It's insane that the army shows up at the end.
The army, mind you, led by what looked like John Cleese.
Yeah, John Cleese. It does look a bit like John Cleese. Yeah. It might as well have been, because it was that whole bit. Like, when the army showed up at the end, I was like, wait a minute, is there a bit of this film I can't remember? It's like, no, the army just show up, they say we're the Monster Squad, and it just ends. And again, you're just left with, wait, so why was Eugene there? Why did he call in the army? What the fuck is the point of that dog, other than it being cute? I'll allow the dog, because dogs are, it's a cute puppy. But Eugene, again, like you said, those weird age differences. Is he somebody's brother?
I don't know.
He has to be, right?
But that's this, because if he was somebody's brother, when the mummy was in his house, wouldn't he have gone to his brothers who's in the Monster Squad, not his dad?
So, see, that's the thing. And again, you've got these weird, like, you've got a 6-year-old hanging out with 13-year-olds, 13-year-olds hanging out with a 16-year-old. And then you've got the whole issue of fucking Frankie, or whatever, Frankenstein's monster, which, let's be honest, again, speaking to how inept Dracula is, how ill-advised was his faith in Dracula? Like, he put so much faith. He's like, oh, it's fine. We've got Dracula. He's going to walk around in broad daylight and he's going to get shit done. Frankenstein's monster, there's never any conflict. He's clearly the nicest monster who's ever fucking lived.
Why does 7-foot Frankenstein need lifts in his shoes as well?
Yeah, that's a strange choice.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean, though, right? I'm not being mental there. Like, you think, oh, usually he would show up the monster, he would go rah or try and scare them, and then the little girl shows up and he realizes he's actually got a heart or whatever. But they don't have that bit. They just have Frankenstein goes into town, like, he's all like, yes, master, I'll do what you want, master. He rocks up into town. Apparently no one sees him. And this little girl says hello, and he's like, oh, he's actually quite nice. And he, all the kids seem to get on with him, and he's saying bogus, and then he's spying on Lisa as well, because everyone's fucking spying on Lisa because she cannot keep her top on. And I don't know, man. That whole thing with Frankenstein is super strange. I don't know how to feel about that character at all. I also think of the monsters, he's the lamest looking. Like
played by Tom Noonan as well, who two of his big ones. He was the Axeman in Last Action Hero.
Yeah.
The one that killed Arnold Schwarzenegger's son on the top of the roof. And was it Kane?
Kane in RoboCop 2.
In RoboCop 2, yeah.
That's what I think. And he's a horrible character. And they were I think they weren't the same year, but they must have been super close, RoboCop 2 and this. And he has gone from playing the nicest monster in the world to playing one of the most hideous kind of bad guys ever. I hate RoboCop 2, just to be clear, but I always thought he was actually quite a horrendous baddie. And I mean that in a good way, if that makes sense. I bought him as being quite a horrible little piece of shit.
RoboCop was actually 87. RoboCop 2 was 90.
Oh, was it? Oh, fair enough. So he did have a couple of years to get from lovable Frankie to horrendous Kane.
When you go back to putting all their hands in each other, you said about, and you had the dog and you had the Little Rascals moment. And then you had Rudy pop his hand on top. His 45-year-old
His 45-year-old man hand.
calloused hands.
Yeah.
You couldn't see
just a bunch of fucking bananas just plonked on top.
I'm in, fellas. I was so shocked when I found out he was actually just 17 in this.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I like Rudy in this.
Oh yeah.
And if again they had some kind of brief explanation as to, I guess maybe that's enough. Maybe he did just want to spy on Lisa, and that was he was just aware of okay, they've got a tree house, it overlooks Lisa's back garden, and I'll be able to take pictures of her topless. Maybe that's it. But he seems to buy into it. When they do the monster test and stuff, he's not kind of passively. He seems keen to join the gang.
Yeah, because when they went to dinner, then he was like. He was like, "What? Am I in or not?" He was really wanted to be in.
Yeah, I think he was keen.
Talking about
there's obviously
when they went to dinner.
There's a Rudy spin-off waiting to happen for sure.
When Sean went to back to dinner with his parents, then his mum, Mary Ellen Trainor,
of course. Again, she's in every film. Now that you mentioned it, I'm just yep, she's in every fucking 80s film. It's unbelievable.
I know. So he sees his mum. Then he picks up Van Helsing's book, and then I think it's a bit later that night then, he sees that there's a phone call for him. Some random old guy just rang for Sean from school. It's Mr. Alucard. And then all of a sudden, he doesn't even pause. He sees the name Alucard. He goes to a piece of paper and he starts becoming an anagram master. Some guy's ringing me. He's got to have... And don't get me wrong, I'm the one who sounds like that. I don't like this film. I still fucking love this.
No. The thing is, I did thoroughly enjoy this film, but it's easy to pick apart. It totally is. And even that scene, like you say, he immediately sees that name, Alucard, and he's like, "Oh, that's probably an anagram." As soon as you decide this is an anagram, within 2 seconds, you should be like, it's Dracula. The thing is, he figures out that it's an anagram far too quickly. Yeah. But then to actually get what the anagram is takes him far too long. It's if you figure that out, it's
backwards.
That's what I mean. It's so simple. It's of course it's Dracula. But it takes him he's there with 4 pieces of paper. D-L, no, that's not right. Maybe it's Wolfman. Oh, no, it is Dracula, of course. And then, of course, that leads into the whole weird bit with the strange old German guy, which is that what he's credited as? Scary old German guy?
Yes, scary German guy.
Yeah, scary German guy. I got to be honest, when I was younger, I never noticed the disturbing nod to the Holocaust.
No, and I was going to say the same thing.
Which is bizarre.
Younger when he said, "I know monsters too," and all that, I still thought that there was going to be some sort of sequel that came along that actually he was a monster or something. And then I thought he just had run-ins with monsters in his youth. Okay.
I thought that was the shtick. I never thought it's I've actually ran into, my family were all murdered in concentration camps in Nazi Germany in 1942.
And I never got the whole focus on the tattoo thing. I never and it's wow, that just went very deep, very quickly.
Yeah, it gets dark super quick. Yeah. It gets dark super quick, but yeah, I don't know, man. Like I said, I'm not sure exactly how to feel about this film, but the fact of the matter is, like you say, when you enjoy it, I'm still able to overlook its myriad of faults because it's so unique and it's so charming. Like, you know, it's easy to say, oh, this is like the Goonies. But the Goonies isn't like that. As I said, like the Goonies never feels like the Goonies always feels like a family film. And I think it's the reason why we were all so attached when we were younger, because you were watching a kid's film, but one with like genuine elements of horror. Yeah. And I think that's probably the reason we all loved it so much, was that it's like, holy shit, these bits are actually quite scary, or they're quite violent, you know? And yeah, it's interspersed throughout the whole film. But as I said earlier, I do think it gradually becomes more of a horror. I feel like at the start, it's very much in family-friendly territory. Like even bits like, you know, the bit on the plane, which we referenced earlier, where Dracula goes and gets Frankenstein. You think in any horror film, that the pilot who goes back into the plane on his own, you're like, oh, he is going to get absolutely murdered by Dracula here. But it doesn't happen. Just Dracula floats around and he just flies. He could have killed him, but he doesn't. And you're just like, oh yeah, of course, because yeah, it's Dracula and it's monsters, but it's a family film, so they don't go around killing everyone. But then at the end of the film, he's killing everyone.
What a random place for those bomb doors as well, to have that handle. Like it's just on the floor behind some boxes. Just conveniently
it's strange.
Landed. It was just a strange place to have those. Yeah, but no, I see what
what happens?
It's a kids' film, and then all of a sudden it just becomes like just Dracula, just all out, just fucks up the whole town, just like lays waste. He stops to blow up a kid's treehouse, a kid's clubhouse. Like
and has a little quip at the end. Was it meeting adjourned?
Adjourned. He's got 20 minutes to do that. Like he's got 20 minutes to get to him, and he blows her up. But before we go into the actual end scene, we've got to actually. I think we've actually. Approaching, we've got to talk about that incredible montage.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, this kind of, I mean, we could talk about it we usually do a music section, and obviously we can talk about it a bit more there, but it's such an integral part of the film. And when it came on, I remembered that there was a montage in this film, but I didn't remember how fucking awesome it was. The song, was it Rock Until You Drop? I've had it in my head all goddamn week, and I'm like, was this just some like any old person doing this? And I checked out, and it's actually by Michael Sembello, who hasn't done a huge amount you'd be aware of. But one thing he has done is Flashdance. And because of that, I started listening to Flashdance, and I was like, fuck, man, Flashdance is an absolute belter. So I've been listening to Flashdance and Rock Until You Drop all week. But
nice.
It's a combination of... It's a great song. It's an absolutely fantastic song. It's a quintessential 80s montage. Like, it is up there, I would say, with your Karate Kids, with your Scarface, with your Rocky Fours. It's this weird forgotten gem of an 80s montage. And the montage itself is like, you know, the kids going around school, like getting ready for this big showdown at the end. Oh, it's just, I love every minute of that montage.
What I love about the montage, though, is it proves just how useless. Well, actually, Eugene's not that useless because he managed to bring the army with that note. But just how useless the rest of the Monster Squad are, except for Rudy. Because Rudy is the guy that seems to be stealing and making all the weapons that get used.
Yeah. Everyone else is making cards.
Yeah.
They're making business cards for the Monster Squad. I'm like, you're putting the cart ahead of the horse here a little bit, Sunshine. I was like, you've got a job to do
last night. What did Sean do in that montage? I can't even remember if he was in that montage.
No, Sean was in it. Didn't he make the business cards?
No, that was Patrick. Patrick.
No, there's a bit. No, Sean's definitely in it because he's in class and he's like looking at the clock, counting down the seconds, like to get out of class.
So that's his montage.
I'm not sure if he does anything after that.
No, it's good point. Because mainly that montage was Rudy. Like Rudy sharpened the stakes. He stole all of Mary Ellen Trainor's silverware to make one silver bullet. One silver bullet, mind you. Got to be very confident on that. Also,
there was a lot of silvers off one silver bullet.
Where did he get the casting to make a silver bullet that would fit the copper's revolver? Like, I'm thinking
probably from one of his full-grown man friends. Yeah. That's probably where. And,
he steals the teacher's bow and arrow, which is a proper like compound bow by the looks of it. Like, you know.
Yeah. It's as I say, it's super fun, but again, it's this weird thing where you keep questions like, what are these kids doing? Rudy, I would say Rudy's pulling his weight. He makes the weapons. He kills the Bride of Dracula. Everyone else pretty much does fuck all. Although, does Patrick blow up Wolfman later on?
No, the dad does.
Oh, the dad does. And again, because they're in a different, very violent action film. Yeah. And, his partner gets killed, but again, like, that's all very dramatic. When they show up on the lawn and, like, the mum shows up and she's screaming and everyone's like, it's like from that point on, it's that point onwards that it becomes a very different film, I think. Like, it really does become something almost resembling a legitimate horror at that point.
Well, it's just before that when they've done their montage, they've set up. Rudy and Patrick have gone to grab the sister, and they're going to meet at 10 o'clock. And then you've got Eugene. They took the 6-year-old to Dracula's house. That's another story again.
Yeah.
And so they go to Dracula's house with Frank because they're going to be fine because they got Frankie, and then they go into the house, and that's where they got to find the amulet. Dracula's been looking for this amulet forever, and they find it pretty quick. Just before they arrive.
Yeah.
Sets off his dynamite, causes Frankie to get buried under the door. All of a sudden, Sean just becomes some sort of he just becomes some sort of heartless leader. Look, Frankie's down. Can't do anything for Frankie.
Frankie's dead. Forget about Frank. Yeah. We're the Monster Squad. We got to think about results. Yeah. I got to think about the bottom line. Frankie's finished. And if he's not, we can't turn it around. He'll be dead soon.
Sean is a tactician, mind. Sean analyzed the situation. He analysed the situation of Wolfman attack, and he was like, just kick him in the dick.
Kick him in the nards.
Yeah, just take him out.
The thing is, I was quite surprised there when, and Horace, let's be clear, has the 2 best lines in the film. Wolfman's got nards, and my name is Horace. Yeah. Like, they're, without question, the 2 best lines in the film. And he's so shocked, like, the whole Wolfman's got nards. And I'm just like, yeah, why wouldn't he have nards? It's clearly a boy. I don't think I would have been that shocked. I'm like, it's Wolfman, but...
Any depiction that you usually, like, he's bottomless, isn't he? Like a weird Porky Pig bloody...
He is quite often, yeah. But, like, the thing is, I don't know, I got to be honest, I've not been, the closest thing to it is a wolf. Like, when a wolf is just walking around, I don't think his willy's just hanging out. I assume it goes in and out. It can be hidden unless he's on the job, so to speak. The fact of the matter is, this is irrelevant.
Or, like, investigated how a wolf's penis works. So
no, I've not really thought about it until this point. But that's the great thing about this podcast. It's all about kind of leading us towards the big questions. But the fact of the matter is,
searches that I'm going to have to explain to my wife. Yeah,
but he is wearing pants in this. Like, let's be clear, this is a more traditional 50s style Wolfman who's still got the top on, the torn shirt, and the Stan Winston face, which is pretty bizarre. And I don't know. I wasn't as shocked as Horace when I was just like, I think he would have nards. Why wouldn't he have nards? I mean, I'm not sure if I'd call him nards, but whatever.
Also and then they managed to escape Wolfman. They find the weird Colonel Custard statue.
Colonel Custard.
And which is in, like, some weird 3-way hallway. And you got... And it was in this moment that they all decided to walk as slow as they possibly could to... they want to kill the Monster Squad. Don't get me wrong. They actually... Like, he did say to Frankie...
It's so slow, though.
And they are like, we've only got 20 minutes till we got to get this amulet sorted. Let's go as slow as we can. So they got...
Even forget about the time. They've got the kids trapped. If you want to kill them, like, just go kill them. Yeah. But they're just like, we're going to do this dramatically as fuck. But it's, again, these monsters are always at this shit. It's like... As I said, Brides of Dracula, they're shit. They get killed by Rudy. And then Horace, who's got a shotgun all of a sudden, which is fantastic. But Gilman, or the monster from the Blue Lagoon, whatever you want to call it, he shows up and he just kind of stands there waiting to be shot.
He was like, just do it now. Just
do it. Dude, just fucking end it. I don't want to be here. Kind of like, the Wolfman didn't want to be there, I guess. And again, those weird moments when he turns back into a human and he's like desperately like, I want to be killed or whatever, please kill me. It's all pretty dark. But Gilman was useless, despite the fact they looked awesome. And I'd make the argument that the Mummy, which is no surprise, like, again, the design by Stan Winston looks ace, but the Mummy's shit. It's got what is its powers beyond being old as fuck? Like, it doesn't seem to have superhuman strength. I don't know how it ends up in Eugene's closet. That's weird as hell.
And that, I mean, a very slow thing as well, because the shuffling is just not
it's super slow. Yeah. And it doesn't seem to have any actual limbs. Like when it unravels, it literally just unravels into nothing. The only thing it has is the top of a skull. So I would argue
how long was that bandage as well that it managed
super long.
cover a whole 6 foot man, I'm guessing, before he was
it definitely gave me flashbacks to is it Fast and Furious 6 when they're on the plane going down the longest runway of all time?
Oh, you mean the runway that's longer than Great Britain?
Yeah. Well, that is the thing. Like, they drive for what must be the best part of, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile, and he's just unraveling the entire way. I'm like, dude, that is a lot of bandage. So the only thing I could kind of equate it to, maybe that would make sense, is maybe he's wound like a cassette, because there's no actual bones in there. Remember when you were younger and you'd get a cassette and you would be with your friends, you're like, oh, let's see how much actual cassette is in it. And you'd pull it all out and run down the streets. Or maybe that's just me and my cycle friends. But I always remember, I was like, man, there's a lot of fucking tape in here. It just keeps going and going. So I'm just gonna say he's wrapped up like an old-fashioned 80s cassette or something. I don't know.
So if they wanted to bring it back together, they just put a bic in one part
in the middle and just wind him back up, of course. But yeah, as I said, I think most of the monsters they look the part, but they're shit. And even Dracula, he makes a lot of mistakes, as I said, none more so than his blind faith in the utterly useless and adorable Frankie, until the end, when he suddenly becomes a badass. That was when, because I read about that whole Dracula, him being the best Dracula before I watched the film. And I gotta be honest, for the longest time, I was like, I don't see it. I don't see it at all. I don't think he's very good. He doesn't have an accent. Why does he sound American? But then suddenly, for the last quarter of the film, I'm like, he's a badass in the end of the film. I know he gets killed, obviously. Well, does he get killed? Because he gets stabbed, but then he gets dragged through the portal by bizarre Van Helsing.
He's in limbo, probably having a fight to eternity with Van Helsing.
Yeah, and Van Helsing seems very happy about it. I'm not sure if thumbs up was a thing back in whenever, I don't know, the 12th century or whenever the hell it was.
When they found the amulet that was hidden by Van Helsing's underlings or followers or whatever, and they blew a hole in the wall, and the place was covered in crosses. Where did they get their garlic? Because their garlic lasted 100 years.
No idea. Magic garlic? No idea. Again, the problem is so many questions in this film have no answers. That's the thing. That's the truth of it, isn't it? How many times have we actually come out with a reasonable answer to any question we've asked today? And believe me, I've got another 100 questions I could ask about this film. I'm for time's sake and my own sanity, I've got to draw the line somewhere. But I don't think we're going to have any answers.
There is one thing I want to say. That when he gets the amulet, and they get back out and he's holding it, and Dracula now catches up to him, picks up Sean. He's screaming at him, give it to me. And Horace pulls out.
Why is it when you read that, it sounded like, a kind of transcript from a court case? He got on top of him. He said, give it to me. I was like, oh, it all suddenly sounded very dark. But sorry.
Flashbacks.
Yeah, sorry.
Then Horace pulled out a pizza, randomly, just out of his pocket. And I just had to think to myself, they always said pizza would ruin your figure, but like that?
Yeah. I mean, just to kind of smash it into his... In fairness, it was one of those things, my first instinct was, that's a bit silly. But I'm just like, well, why is it? If it's got garlic on the pizza, why wouldn't it burn his face? Yeah, I don't think the burn actually lasts, but I was like, that's pretty cool.
It's I was going to say flashback to Lost Boys, but no, they debunk the garlic MILF. They debunk the garlic myth in...
there we go.
Yeah,
they do. Just one more random thing. See, I say I'm not going to bring up any stupid questions. I know it's unanswerable, but I have to mention it. At the start of the film, at Dracula's castle, I believe it is, why are there fucking armadillos walking around?
I said the same thing. Why are there armadillos? Transylvania. I'm guessing they're in Transylvania, being Dracula.
Yeah, they're in Transylvania. They're not native Transylvania, I don't think. And why? Even if they were, let's just say they are. Let's give the benefit of the doubt and say. And I've been to Transylvania. I didn't see a single armadillo. I got to be honest with you, when I was in Transylvania, not a single one. But let's just say that I missed them all and that armadillos are actually running around all over the place in Transylvania. they're not the scariest of monsters. Like, you'd think, all right, rats, bats, it's supposed to be Dracula's spooky castle. And somebody was like, we should get armadillos in. I was like, don't you think they're a bit cute? No. Dude, they're scary as shit. Let's fill it with armadillos. It's, again, another one of the crazy decisions made in an utterly bonkers, but utterly charming film. Because again, to go back to your earlier point, like, it's easy to tear this film apart. And it does have problems. And again, on an objective level, it's hard to say it's legitimately a good film, but it's so charming. Like, it's still a good it's a good watch. And, mileage will vary if you don't have any nostalgia attached with it, but even if you don't have any nostalgia, I would still argue that if you're a fan of these kind of films, there's something to like about this film.
Absolutely. I mean, I had a bit of a different experience watching it with my wife than you did with yours. My wife actually, she said she enjoyed it, but it was dark, so there could have been a face. But
fair enough.
But no, like you said, mileage will vary, and it all depends. And this is one that's definitely going to split the crowd in regards to people who've watched it as a kid. Because I've had a lot of like text messages and stuff saying I loved this as a kid, and I'm thinking, well, you loved it as a kid, maybe watch it again. But
because my friends who did watch it again, they all came back with mixed reviews. Like to a man, they nearly all said, listen, it was still fun, but it didn't hold up. Like, it wasn't as good as like nearly all of them said it wasn't as good as I remembered. And I think part of it is the film itself, but the other part is the fact that this film disappeared for so long. Like, when I was younger, it was readily available on VHS, and we all rented it out and everybody watched it. And then it disappeared because there wasn't a Region 2 DVD for absolutely donkey's years. And I'm not even sure if there is a Region 2 DVD. There certainly wasn't for a long time.
I think there's French copies of English cuts on there.
But like that again,
I don't think there's an actual UK version, no.
Yeah, it wasn't like you were just walking into, say, HMB 10, 15 years ago and being like, oh, look, the Monster Squad, like 2 for a tenner, maybe I'll pick that up. Like, nobody I know owned Monster Squad. Like, everybody I know rented it in like the late 80s, early 90s. But then there was this long period after VHS when it just, over here in particular in the UK, it just disappeared. And I've got to be honest.
It disappeared off TV as well, because I remember it being TV cuts, and then all of a sudden it just stopped being TV cuts.
I haven't seen it on TV for ages, but as you say, it suddenly appeared on Amazon Prime, which was perfect timing for this, obviously. But as I said, I'm glad I had the opportunity to watch it again, and there's all the ingredients are there. Like, the score by, what's his name? Bruce Broughton, who did, it definitely has Poltergeist vibes. He did Tombstone. He did Lost in Space. When I was looking at the films, I was like, okay, I love Tombstone. That's one of my favorite Westerns. And I was like, Lost in Space, that's a piece of shit. So to show that he's done kind of different things. But I love the score. I love the monsters from Stan Winston. Even though they don't live up to the Goonies, I quite like the cast. The kids are all pretty likable.
Well, they're all having a lot of fun in this film.
They totally are. I like the
fight monsters. So if we...
It's got like, just to finish my point, it has all the individual elements are good, but for some odd reason, it hasn't quite come together into a cohesive whole. Like you said, maybe it's those 13 magical minutes where, it ties the film together, but something it's just a bit too messy for its own good.
Oh yeah, this film does travel everywhere, but I still I don't know. There's just something just charming about it that still.
Yeah, no, that is it.
I still really enjoy, and I still enjoy watching. So I know we've covered it a couple of times, but and I know we've jumped back, forth, here, there, and everywhere. But we get to the ending now.
As we do,
we get to the ending now. The ending of the film. We got to do the incantation because we got to make Limbo show up, and I still don't understand why they're making Limbo. Why is Dracula hunting for the amulet? If nobody was looking for it, why is he looking for it? If it's the thing that's going to send him into limbo.
Yeah, and even when they send him into limbo, they kind of he does Sean stabs him in the chest with one of the spikes at the end. It's traditionally that's it. That's the end. I don't really get the whole limbo thing at all. I don't know. It all, again, feels a bit silly and poorly thought out, or at least poorly explained, maybe overly thought out and poorly explained. But I like I said, by the end, I'm like, all right, this is all a bit silly. It doesn't really make much sense. But by that point, I was totally in. And as I said, I actually think the last the last quarter is when tonally, I think the film's at its best. And what I think the film should have been from the start. And maybe it was because they're under pressure. It's easy for me to say this, but they're probably trying to sell it. You know, the Goonies only came out a few years before, and they're probably under studio pressure to say, listen, we want another Goonies film. Whereas they're like, well, we want to do a Universal Monsters film. And as I said, the end in particular, if you take away the fact that the army showed up and the whole Eugene thing, which is crazy, that's when it does feel like a really charming poltergeist level monster movie. And that's when I think maybe that's the reason I want to go back to it, because it ended on such a positive note to me, even though in the build up it's a bit all over the shop.
For small town USA, which I'm assuming, which feels like what this place is, because it doesn't feel like it's a major city.
No, it's totally small town USA.
Does every adult male work for the police?
A lot work for the police, and everybody drinks Pepsi.
Yeah,
they're the two things you can take to the bank. Everyone's drinking Pepsi, and everybody works for the police.
There was so many police, but they were all in uniform except for the two detectives. So you've got so many constables, and then just like two detectives. Well, one now because the other one's crispy.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. But yeah, they're actually quite good. I quite like the dad and his partner. I like some of the kind of bands they've got back and forth. It's strange when he suddenly gets murdered by Dracula, but yeah, there's a lot of cops who all get murdered at the end of the film.
Yeah, lots of neck snapping, and one cop, bless him, who ends up in limbo. Explain that one.
He gets. It's like, well, what happened to Dave? Can I see the body? This is awkward. We're not actually sure if he's dead, if he's trapped in limbo. We did see this old guy. He seemed to know what was going on, but I'm not sure if he's with him or he's with Dracula. What timeline's in? If he's essentially stuck in purgatory, for infinity. So needless to say, there won't be a burial.
Let's just say Dave's fucked.
Dave is fucked. No two ways about it. But yeah, like I said, the thing is, the next thing to talk about after that, I suppose, is the soundtrack. And the thing, right? All right, let's jump into it. We've done the film to some extent or another, and usually at this point we cover a few of the issues, like the subjects, I guess we have a legacy soundtrack and video games, and facts, of course. Sorry, but as we're on, just because like the end of the film, obviously, again, tonally, you're not sure quite where it is, but it does that great thing that a lot of movies did in the late 80s and early 90s, had an end credit song, which I like to think of as being white-friendly rap. Yeah. Because that's essentially what it is. And loads of films had it. It was like Ghostbusters 2 had Bobby Brown, which was a fucking cracking song. Donald Trump's in the video for that, by the way. It's really strange. Yeah. It's got loads of people. It's got some other people, but needless to say, Donald Trump pops up in that video. But there was like the ninja rap from Turtles 2. Nightmare on Elm Street 4 had a weird white-friendly rap. The Addams Family with the Addams Groove and the Addams Family Value had Wump or whatever it was. The first one was by MC Hammer. And there was like a whole bunch of these movies which all had these weird, easy listening rap songs. It was really, really bizarre. But and do you know the song in the end credits is called Monster Squad by a group called Monster Squad?
Is it?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's fictional or what. I couldn't find all the details on it, but it needs to say it's a pretty catchy tune. But the fact of the matter is, the one that sticks with you is the Michael Sembello Rock Until You Drop. And just be clear, there was a music video for this, and the music video is literally the montage from the film. Yeah, there's nothing else. This isn't a Cyndi Lauper number or anything like that. It's literally just 2.5 minutes cut directly from the film, and it just works. It works perfectly as a music video because it's one of those insane 80s montages. But I think at this point you should be like, oh, well, what else could you have as the soundtrack to this film? And it was just like, it's Rock Until You Drop. It has to be. I'm not sure if the song makes any sense. But that is offset by the fact that the strange, family-friendly rap music at the end does what all those songs do, and that is literally tell you the entire plot of the film. It just relives the plot for you in rap form.
I was going to say the same
thing. All of these songs do the same thing.
Have you got the lyrics there?
Not for the rap song, no.
I have.
Oh, break them down.
Right.
You actually going to try and rap, or are you going to just...
God, no.
Oh, it's a shame.
We want people to listen.
I thought you were going to drop it.
Listening. But, even... I think there's 2 verses, but I'll only do the first verse. But yeah, it pretty much tells you exactly. Like if you haven't watched the film, just listen to the Monster Squad rap, and you'll know the film inside and out anyway.
Yeah,
so
100%.
After 100 years on the darkest night, the forces of evil come out to fight. The amulet they must destroy and stand for man at the darkest point. Who can stop their deadly might, and who will stand up for their right? From the mouth of babes comes dynamite. The Monster Squad is going to groove tonight. Count Dracula, now the Wolfman too, the Mummy and Gillman swimming in the pool. We need silver bullets, we need wooden stakes. Normal stuff won't stop them because they live on hate. Speak some magic words from virgin lips. Maybe that'll shake them, make them slip and trip. There's no turning back. Gotta find the might.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, the Monster Squad is going to jam tonight. That's just
fantastic. It's like you said, and it's not unique at all. This happens in all of these songs. They just tell you what happened in the movie in rap time. They're just like, it's basically a rap synopsis, if you will. That's essentially it.
Yeah.
It was for like 5-6 years. There was just this period of rap synopsis at the end of every film. It was bizarre, but it's still oddly catchy. The Monster Squad.
I love it though.
It's not as good as Rock Until You Drop, but it's still pretty catchy.
I love it because it's the old because the rap thing. Like some of the things you got to put in there to make it rhyme.
Yeah, it's a bit of a jump to it, isn't it?
The only thing,
Gillman in the pool. Okay.
When you say
I'm
about,
not sure if that quite rhymes.
And Rock Until You Drop for this film does, for the tone that you're getting for this film, that fits perfectly. I couldn't help but think if the film followed the tone of the last quarter, because that was dark.
Yeah.
I have Leonard Cohen's Everybody Knows in my head for it.
That could work. But again, it's because up until Rock Until You Drop, it's that kind of film. But literally, Rock Until You Drop is the cutoff point. Because then all of a sudden it cuts to the police and it all gets pretty dark. People start getting killed and stuff. It is again, they do bring it back with the Van Helsing thumbs up and the bizarre, army showing up. Yeah. But there is that period after Rock Until You Drop when suddenly it's like shit gets real for 20 minutes. But again, that's what makes, I think, again, that's why the movie is held, I don't want to say held up, because I'm not sure if it has, but why it's still so special to people, why people loved it so much and why people keep watching it is because there's no other film which is tonally quite like this. Do you know what the rating is for this film? I should have checked that out.
A 15.
Yeah, it totally feels, and that's one of the reasons it would have bombed, because there's too, I was like, because of it, like there was no 12 back then. So it was either you were PG or you were 15. And there's no way this film was a PG. And it had quite a bit, and it had loads of swearing in it as well, again.
Yeah.
Tons of swearing. So you got all that swearing, you got necks being broken, you've got let's be honest, the pretty gross Wolfman explosion bit. And I was like, there's no way this is a PG. But the problem is, 70% of this film is a total PG movie.
Yeah.
So you can see why, whether it was made for 12 million, whatever, you can see why it bombed and why on VHS, you forget about the 15 on it. I guess parents would see it on VHS, and even the cover's awesome, the poster on it, but it looks like a kid's film because for the most part it is. So you were watching this film as a kid, and you're like, there's a part of you which like, oh yeah, this is a good fun kids film, but then you're like, but it's also kind of not. Yeah. And I think that's why it had that attachment with us all for sure. Yeah. I think that's a massive part of it, undoubtedly. But yeah, I mean, and that speaks to one of the other sections we usually cover, and that's the legacy of the film. So the legacy of this one's a bit strange because obviously it was a flop and there were no sequels, there were no follow-ups. But obviously, it's had enough of a legacy that there was a fan-made film, which sadly I've been unable to watch because you cannot find it fucking anywhere. Wolfman's got nards. But I do plan on watching that at some point or another. But there was supposed to be a remake in 2019 with Paramount. And that makes sense because you think 2019, you're coming off the back of It, you're coming off the back of Stranger Things, and those films totally feel like Monster Squad. Like you look at the script and the plot of Monster Squad, yeah, it's campier, but it's basically Stranger Things. It's basically it. And that was one of the issues I think they had was like, okay, well, if we just remake it, it feels like we're ripping off Stranger Things, which is really a rip-off of Monster Squad. But if we go with, say, all right, let's do where are the Monster Squad now? Like if you were making the film, which I think actually makes the most sense. If you do a sequel, you have to make it for people like us, for the people who grew up with it. So then you're like, okay, well, what are the Monster Squad doing in their mid-40s, early 50s? But then you're like, well, that's just It Chapter 2. That's the same thing again. So it was stuck in a weird place where, because of other films copying it, it was just going to feel derivative. So I can see why they didn't bother in the end.
And you couldn't really bring the same Universal monsters back either.
I guess they could, because they're not actual Universal monsters. They were rip-offs in the first place. Yeah. So you can always bring back the Pro Evo cast. That's not going to be a problem. But I would oddly say, like, most of the films we cover on this podcast, and obviously we're only 3 episodes in, but there'll be a lot more. I will say 90% plus. If you ask me, should there be a remake to this? I'll nearly always say no. It's like, we're not going to pick bad films. This film is totally, despite the fact that it might end up being derivative because of what's come since, I'm like, this film is due a remake, because I feel like a slight shift in the tone. I would like to see Shane Black come back and do it. And to be honest, I would like to see them do it, like, have a movie with a new bunch of kids, and maybe do it as a TV show. Maybe do, I don't want to say go the Karate Kid route, because I would suggest doing the show with them as adults. But like, I think it's a great idea for a film. It wasn't quite nailed. It's a cult movie, which most people haven't seen. If any film is due a remake, I actually think it is this.
You could totally do this as a TV show, 100%. I think as a mini series. It only needs, because if you talk about this film now and the problem with pacing, the problem with story and everything, you could pretty much just carry on with what's going on as an 8 episode miniseries that you could just delve into the backstory, and you'd explain why the monsters are coming from, where they're coming from, what they're doing. Mm-hmm. It just opens it up to a whole new route of why they're doing this.
The film didn't have enough time to give each monster their due anyway. Like, you just think you've got potentially 5 if you add Dracula's Brides. I know it's plural, but as essentially a 5th monster, so to speak. You've got the 2 timelines. Like, there's so much to work with here for a TV show. And the only thing I was thinking, which would be an interesting take on this, is if you did legitimately a 2021 version of this 1987 film. You think in 1987, this was doing a monster film about 50s monsters. So you were picking the quintessential Universal monsters. If you did it now, but for the 80s monsters, you think, could you do a Monster Squad with Freddy, Jason, Mike Myers, and Leatherface? I mean, would those be the 4 obvious contenders? But it would be tonally massively different. Just to be clear,
I do think there's a problem with that, because you're getting less of the I don't know. It's really weird, because those, if you're doing them as the 80s monsters, they're all just slasher monsters. So
that is the problem. That is the problem.
The tone just changes completely.
Okay, right. I appreciate, because 80s monsters are all traditionally a bit scarier and a bit grosser. Yeah. Is there a potential, even if you accept the fact that it's going to be darker, can you think of a more varied 80s monster lineup? Because I got to be honest, they were just the 4 big hitters. When I think of 70s and 80s monster movie, I think of Mike Myers, I think Jason, I think Leatherface, I think Freddy. Is there a more interesting lineup? Like, I don't think there's a water equivalent. I don't think there's a flying monster. I can't think of anyone else.
Well, for me, I mean, I'd probably throw Pumpkinhead in there.
Pumpkinhead.
Lance Henriksen's Pumpkinhead.
Oh, again, though, the big part of this is the fact that they're iconic. Like, I think that's an important part of it. It's like the reason that it works is like those are like you said, to use that word again, the quintessential movie monsters from the 50s. And it's like, if you're trying to sell this as like the 80s ones, you say Pumpkinhead, I think 98% of the population just go Pumpkinhead.
I actually thought he was iconic until this moment.
Pumpkinhead totally is not iconic. But now I'm literally, maybe I'm just going insane. I'm struggling to think of another iconic movie monster from the 80s.
No, but it's full on. I don't know. I don't think the tone would work with just 4 slasher monsters.
And plus, could you really have a movie with Leatherface and kids? Like, the only one who arguably, like, I think you could make Jason work. I think if you went full camp Freddy Krueger, that could work. I just don't think that Mike Myers, and in particular, I don't think Leatherface works. He's too gross. He's too horrible.
Not 12-year-olds as we got here, because they'd be high schoolers.
Yeah, no, I think it would have to stay. I think it would have to remain the classic. You could do a slightly different twist on them, perhaps.
Yeah.
But I would, to be honest, if I was going to do a remake, I would like them to remain as that classic 50s iconic monsters. I would still like Dracula to look like old-fashioned Dracula. But with Gilman, what the fuck?
Those Universal monsters are coming back, aren't they? Like doing the Invisible Man and doing
they've
like
been
Wolfman's
kind of half
coming out now and stuff like that. And
is that a thing? Because they were doing the Dark Universe for a bit, weren't they? Because they started with the Mummy,
yeah,
but that flopped, so they just
kind of ended it. Because you cast Tom Cruise in there.
That shouldn't be a bad. Oh, dude, I love Tom Cruise.
Not a fan. Oh,
I love Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is.
We're gonna have some interesting discussions when we get to Top Gun and.
Oh, dude, man, Tom Cruise's batting average is unbelievable. Like he must have like a 4.0 batting average. Like he's like most of the films. Sorry, I keep using baseball analogies, but he is like most of his films are good at the very least. He's really in. Anyway, no. Sorry,
using we'll use it. So using analogies, we'll baseball analogies. That actually could lead us into facts, I guess.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah. So there's not many for this film. Obviously, being a cult film that didn't really make much, and not many people have seen it. But there was a couple that interest me. Like Liam Neeson was originally meant to be in this. He was paid for a part, but it was never shot.
Well, he was going to be Dracula.
Yeah. So can you imagine being paid and they're saying, "No, you're good, mate."
Well, I think because he went so far into production, they were like, "Oh, I think he was going to be Liam Neeson was going to be Dracula," and it was just because. What's his name? Fuck, I keep getting his name. The guy who played Dracula. Duncan Riga, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
I think they just loved him so much. So everyone seems to love him as Dracula. Like they were just like, oh, we've hired Liam Neeson, but this guy's so good that we have to have him as Dracula. So perhaps I'm in the minority where I'm not as convinced as other people. But yeah, Liam Neeson, I think he would have worked. Obviously he can't have the Irish accent. That's gotta go. But yeah, I'm a big Liam Neeson fan, so I'm all for that.
You've already touched on it as well, that the Wolfman's face was modelled after Stan Winston, which was yeah. And then the only other thing
that actually explains why, because it was one of the things I was watching when I was watching the film, and I totally forgot about that. I was like, why does Wolfman's face look so weird? And it's obviously because Stan Winston's face looks weird. I mean, that's the only reason, isn't it? So yeah, sorry, Stan.
The only other thing that jumped out to me then in regards to facts that made me the little girl that played Phoebe. Ashley Bank, according to this, and I mean, take this with a grain of salt, turned down a role in Fatal Attraction to play Phoebe. So this 6-year-old girl
was supposed to be in Fatal Attraction.
Yeah, turned down a role in Fatal Attraction to play Phoebe in Monster Squad. Like,
that's a bit of a bizarre one.
I don't understand how she's got 2 scripts in front of her and she's like, I'll call my agent because
Yeah. Well, I'd like to think her parents probably had something saying this, like, maybe we'll go.
They
with
probably read Fatal Attraction.
Campy horror film.
Fatal Attraction was the bunny boiler, wasn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, that's the only other fact I've got is actually about her. Was supposedly the scene at the end when Dracula picks her up. She was on like a lift. He didn't actually pick her up by her neck or hair, whatever it was. But supposedly her screams in that scene were real. Like she was so scared. And
because of his contacts, he never showed her with the red contact. He never talked to her while he wore his red contacts or his Dracula.
Yeah, the teeth. And his teeth are pretty fucked up in that. Yeah. They're pretty messed up.
The other thing we didn't really mention that I thought we'd probably touch on is in the clubhouse. I know we said it was a cool clubhouse, but those posters.
Oh, yeah, I totally forgot to mention that. I've got notes on that. And it's all the way through the film. Even in the kids' Eugene has this like absolutely dope Punisher poster.
Yeah.
One of the kids has an awesome Spider-Man poster. The Godzilla poster in the clubhouse is like that clubhouse is just littered with awesome posters.
All real film because like you had they had like Return of the Living Dead. They had the Zombie Flesh Eaters poster and things like that.
Yeah.
Zombie Flesh Eaters 1979. But they had one for The Being. Now, is that a film or is that just a rip off of The Thing?
I'm not sure. So I'm literally checking this up on my phone now. I can't remember. I was a little bit surprised. Maybe it is in there, but a lot of people ask if Monster Squad is based on the TV show which came before it.
My wife asked the same thing.
But it has nothing to do with it. No. I thought maybe they would try and get like a kind of Monster Squad poster in there, and The Being from 1983. No, there is a
Martin
film
Landau. Yeah,
1983.
Yeah,
it's not brilliantly reviewed.
No,
and I've never heard of it.
No, well, that's why I thought.
Oh, it's got a cracking poster though. It is a cracking poster. You can see why they went for it. The ultimate terror has taken form, starring Martin Landau and from the director of Blood Dinner. No, is that? Oh, sorry, Blood Diner. Sorry,
Blood Dinner.
That makes no more sense. Blood Dinner.
That's what Dracula had. That's what Dracula had. Right?
Yeah, totally. But yeah. To go back to that, we should have mentioned earlier. There's amazing posters all the way through this. There's some it's really weird. Like I see so many toys in this film that I owned when I was younger. There's some really cool stuff, and as you say, like that combined with like the clothes and stuff, the fact that they've come around and like a lot of stuff in this film just looks cool. Like I'm a big fan of everything. Like aesthetically, this film is ace from start to finish. If nothing else, they nailed the aesthetics, and that comes right from those opening credits with like the blood red credits, and it's like you think, oh, this is like a horror film, and then it has that line at the bottom, they blew it and stuff, and I was just like, yeah, I'm in on all this audio. As I said, it keeps coming back to that point again. All the pieces are there. I like everything individually about this film, but kind of like remember that Friends episode where Rachel makes a trifle, and it's like it's got all great stuff. Joey loves it because
meat's good, it's like jam good, yeah.
I totally agree with that, and I do often say to my wife, like when she says like I eat weird things, I'm like, well, I'm playing Joey rules. Like they're all good individually, so I'm happy to eat them together. But that is the problem with this film. It has all ingredients, but it's a trifle made by a fucking lunatic. So yeah, I mean, I still enjoy it because I'm a lunatic and I like crazy food. But yeah, it's a bit all over the shop.
You're perfect in a buffet, then, aren't you? To be fair, like you're happy to chuck everything from the Oriental side to the Texas side all on the one plate and just go for it.
I mean, I feel like my buffet days are behind me somewhat. I feel like that was like, nowadays I'm like, if I'm going to pay to go out for a meal, I prefer to actually have something curated to a certain extent and actually, I can do that crazy shit at home. But yeah, that is correct. If I do end up in a buffet, I'll happily throw everything on the plate. I don't give a fuck. I'm like, well, I'm at a buffet. It's buffet rules, Joey rules at the buffet, 100%. Yeah. But the last, and again, this is a bit shorter than usual ones, is we usually have a video game section.
Yeah.
But bizarre, and again, maybe it speaks to the fact that because it bombed, but there was a video game, but it was cancelled before it was released. And I found it very hard to find any details on that. But I mean, if you were going to have a video game made on this, I've gone to like the two extremes. The one is the Dead by Daylight asymmetrical survival horror, that kind of style where you have the monsters and then everyone else is running around as like the kids, and you're either playing as the monster or you're playing as the kids, you run around. Like, yeah, that kind of sounds okay. But the more I thought about it, the more it's just like, I would just prefer it to be a throwback, side-scrolling 8-bit adventure. Like, I want this to be made by Konami in 1987. Like, that's the people who should have been making this game, and it just never happened. Like, I would 100% play a kind of 8-bit retro throwback Monster Squad game in 2021. I totally would.
That's jumping on that.
Don't say Naughty Dog. Don't say fucking Naughty Dog, dude. If you say Naughty Dog should go make a game on this, fuck you.
I actually wrote it down. Not Naughty Dog.
Thank God.
I agree with you. For me, this entire film feels like a Castlevania game.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
that's why I say Konami. I'm sorry if I'm telling you psychics, but Konami made the goddamn Castlevania games.
That's what I mean.
That's exactly what I had in mind.
Exactly. For me, this game would suit, like you say, a side-scrolling premise and everything. Mm-hmm. The only thing, what was that? There was a game. Was it Until Dawn? A couple of years ago.
No, that's a great shout. That is good. It's like it's almost like a visual novel almost.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, and it's your choices that lead you. Like as the Monster Squad, then your choice is going to get you all to survive, or is the Wolfman,
It's a bit more. It's a bit a light-hearted version take on it kind of thing.
But I feel like that would, like that kind of game. And I can't remember who made it.
I do like the Divab as well. I just can't think of it
because they've done a lot. Because they've released like the Man and Madan and things.
Yeah. I've not played that, but it's the same kind of premise again, isn't it? And I quite like the idea that it is
Supermassive Games.
Yeah, Supermassive Games. Thanks. You make a game in that format, and like the film, it's kind of like that, but it's more light-hearted and there's hijinks and stuff. Yeah. But then suddenly, for like the last hour of the game, like every poor decision you make ends in like some poor police officer dying, and like cutting away to like conversations with their family and like finding out what happens to that cop who gets stuck into the unknown.
Because that's the vein of like Until Dawn as well. Like you play in the game and you think there's this serial killer. Spoilers for anyone who's not played that game. There's a serial killer chasing you, and it turns out, well, no, that's just a guy like taking the piss, just playing a trick on you. But then the twist is there's actually Wendigos, chasing you down and stuff. And like I kind of like that supernatural element to it. And I think, ideally I'd want like a Castlevania style game for this, but if I had to put it into the like 2021 kind of aspect of it, I think an Until Dawn kind of thing would work.
I think you can have your cake and eat it nowadays because there's a lot of these kind of retro remakes which look like 80s games but have like trimmings of modern games.
Yeah.
And like a perfect example, a film we've already mentioned, funny enough, and because the film bombed, the Mummy D-Make was released the same year as the game. And it's a really, really good video game. And they also made an Aliens video game for the Game Boy, not the Game Boy Advance, the 3DS, not the 3DS, the DS, Jesus Christ, the Nintendo DS, which is equally great. And it's kind of like a Metroidvania style 2D adventure game.
Yeah.
And you're just like, that would be perfect for this. Like a game that looks like an 8-bit or a 16-bit game, but it has those trimmings and those like refinements that make it feel more like a modern game.
Yeah.
And I think that would be absolutely perfect for this. Like that's the game I want to play because once you talk about Until Dawn, like I'm all for it, but eventually I'm like, I just prefer to be watching another Monster Squad film. And that is really what I want. Is like I kind of wish, and I want, despite what happened with The Predator, which we mentioned last week, I would like Shane Black involved in this, But I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, because this was written by Shane Black and the director Fred Decker, and I just wonder how much of Shane Black actually stuck. Like no offense to Fred, no offense to the director, but Shane Black's work speaks for himself or speaks for itself.
Well, it's his influence. And you mentioned it earlier, is really prevalent early on in the film, like with the dialogue between the kids. But that seems to kind of tone down a bit. But it just seems to be dropped in really randomly. Like we said, the scene on the plane, the scene between the two. There's a really bizarre scene with his dad, the cop, and his partner, where again he's talking about his job, and it totally feels like quintessential Shane Black dialogue.
Yeah.
But again, then it just disappears and it becomes all a bit generic again. So I'm not sure if he was more like a script doctor where he's just brought in to kind of liven up a handful of scenes rather than really being involved in the script like front to back. But again, I got to be honest, I don't know his level of involvement. So it's hard to say.
As a podcast is mainly covering the 80s and the early 90s, Shane Black's going to be he's going to be quite high on this because he's done a lot of the films that we both probably loved.
Well, he's been involved in two. We've done 3 films, and he's been involved in 2 of them. He was involved in. He was in and was involved in the script on Predator, and he helped write the script on Monster Squad. So I would say he's going to be pretty heavily involved. I mean, he's already running a 66.6%, average in terms of involvement so far. So
we're going to end up having a Shane Black and Mary Ellen Trainor corner to this podcast.
I think it'll just happen naturally. Although I will say that as far as I know, they have 0 involvement in next week's film. So that is something. So we are moving away from Shane Black. Sorry.
Next week's film is your choice, and I think it's probably no, it's not probably. It's a recommendation as well that you fancy doing. But
it is because we put it to Facebook and the people who have listened and liked and subscribed and stuff. And one of the ones that came back was, I mean, don't get me wrong, there were 3 suggestions, and 2 of them I was like, one of them was Braveheart. I was like, I can't do Braveheart because it's in Scotland and it's a bit too recent for my taste. Yeah. But one of them was perfect because it's a film I wanted to do anyway. And with, I'm just going to say what it is now. I don't want to, go too far on this, but because Justice League is coming out on Thursday over here, and I just to be clear, I could do a whole podcast on Justice League coming out, and it's going to be a problem for me not to talk about that next week because I am super looking forward to that. But it makes sense that we do 1989's Batman, Tim Burton's Batman, because it's one of my favorite films. It's one of my favorite superhero films, and I think there's so much to talk about that. How do Michael Keaton, how high does he rank in the Batman list? Jack Nicholson, the Joker, there's so much to talk about that film. As I said, it's easy to forget how much of an impact and how big that was in 1989. Batman was massive.
It's going to be interesting. Let's just say that I don't have the love for it.
Oh, that's great. That's great, because I think we should disagree. It's always a bit more interesting if we disagree, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm going to enjoy it, but we'll deal with that next week. So next week is Batman. Before we tell you to do the usual thing, actually, no, we'll tell them now. So before we sign off, follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, we're on Instagram at Hey You Guys 80s. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep. Get in touch with us. We're on every podcast channel available, Spotify, iTunes, the full work. So you'll be able to find us there. But if you have any suggestions or any questions you want us to cover, please just, give us a shout. And that'd be great. The main thing is, if you listen to it and you've got this far, we do really appreciate you guys listening. So thanks very much. But before we do sign off, we've got to rank it, or rate it, whatever you want to say. First and foremost, I'm going to say Monster Squad. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't suggest strangers watch it because I think without nostalgia it struggles. But if I was gonna give it a 5-star rating out of 5 today, I'd still give it a 3-star rating because I think it's just charming enough. But it's borderline. It's more like a 5 out of 10, if you know what I mean. As far as I'm concerned, the good stuff is great, but it also makes no fucking sense. So a bit of a mixed bag, but super charming. How about you, man?
Well, I was the one that recommended this. I was super looking forward to it, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching it again. Would I get people who've never seen it to watch it, other than making my wife watch it? Probably not. Only because, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love this film. I still loved it watching it, but I have picked so many holes of this film today that it's but nostalgia has kept me going in regards to this film. But I still think it's, and I agree with you on that. It's a solid 3.
It's a 3-star film, even without the nostalgia, because as you said, there's good stuff in this film. 100%, there is good stuff. It's a messy film, and nostalgia, as always, papers over the cracks. But if you're watching this, as my wife has, as your wife has, and as some of my friends have, if you haven't got that nostalgia kind of just getting you through the rough moments, it's like those issues stand out, I think, a lot more clearly. It's all the issues are much more glaring, whereas we're just like, we're used to these issues. You're just kind of watching the fun bits. But I think if you watch it on a more objective level, then it's a bit hit and miss. But there's good stuff. So.
Although it's one of those things because I probably wouldn't recommend it to people who've never seen it or never heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I would definitely get people who've never seen it or never heard it to watch it if I was watching it with them.
It's the kind of film where maybe if you'd had a few beers, you could enjoy it. But I always think that's a dangerous game. If you're, watching a film where you're essentially like, hey, get it? Oh, this, suddenly I'm explaining to them why it's fun. I'm just not sure if it works. So
I don't know.
I would just say, listen, if you watched it when you were younger and you haven't seen it for a long time, it's got its rough edges, but I would suggest get on Amazon Prime, watch it again. If your wife says, oh, what are you watching? I'd probably just say, don't worry about it and just leave it to it. It's just keep it in the world of nostalgia. I think that's where it belongs. That's where the fans are. I'm not sure if this film is going to make all that many new fans in 2021. I just think it's going to become as it becomes more available, I think a lot more people like us will be like, I used to love that film. And they'll get reattached, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think the fan base will grow, but I think it'll be based on people who still grew up with it. I'm not sure if you're suddenly going to get a bunch of like millennials who are like, I fucking love Monster Squad. Perhaps I'm wrong, but I'm just not
I don't know. I feel like, and it's probably because I could probably argue the case if I was there. That's why I would probably want somebody to watch it.
Again, that's a dangerous game. Like me explaining why a film's
this
awesome.
Podcast, this whole thing that we're doing, like it is a dangerous game in regards because you're never going to get somebody who 100% agrees with you, but also you're never going to get. You're always going to find that one convert, I think, and
maybe.
You know, and
as I said, I always
like this, I think I'd love to fly the banner of Monster Squad, like keep it going. So whereas. If somebody said, what shall I watch tonight? And I probably wouldn't say watch Monster Squad, but if they'd like we're in a viewing party, I think I would. I think I'd want to watch it with other people. I think.
I'm gonna lean into that whole side of I would because I would like to support Monster Squad. I do want people to watch it, but I'd be more inclined, as I have in the build up to this, getting my friends who haven't watched it since they were young, getting them to watch it again. Be like, oh, dude, like Monster Squad's on Amazon. Remember Monster Squad? You should totally watch that again. And, you know, to different degrees, they've all enjoyed it. But as I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to be pushing it on other people. But hey, each other, as I said, that's a great thing, disagreements.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. We don't want to agree on everything. That leads into next week.
The point where I probably wouldn't ask them to watch it. If I wasn't, I don't know. I just feel like if I'm there watching it with them, I don't know. It's like you feel like you could defend it better.
I'm not sure if I want to. If I don't want to watch a film with someone if I'm immediately in my head. It's like, oh well, I can defend this film for them. It's like if they're not, they're going to enjoy it or they're not.
I'm flying Monster Squad's banner, mate, and I am all for it. Like I said,
you're not the asshole who like tells a joke, gets no laughs, and then explains why it's funny to you, because that's what that sounds like to me. All right, that's okay then. That's fine. Well, anyway, I look forward to disagreeing with you next week about Batman. So Batman next week. We'll obviously we'll remind people on Facebook and stuff. Like I said, do check us out on all those. Do subscribe. Do tell your friends if you can. But as always, thanks for giving us a listen, man.
Yeah, thank you. And please, as Liam said, please feel free to follow us on all the usual social media and drop us an email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com if you have any recommendations. This has been Monster Squad. Thank you very much for listening. I've been Rob along with Liam, and we'll see you next week.
Catch ya. Cheers, guys.